She said, "She's over you," but her actions tell another story. She's still watching from a distance, still curious, still haunted by the version of you she didn't expect to emerge. Calm, composed, untouchable. You're no longer reacting, no longer chasing, no longer trying to prove your worth. And that's exactly what made you unforgettable. In a world where most people seek attention, your peace became her mystery. Your silence became her echo. In this video, we'll uncover why women struggle to let go of a man who's found his center. The Stoic man who no longer needs validation to feel whole. If you're ready to understand this quiet power, make sure to like, subscribe, and join the journey toward true emotional mastery. Number 1. The paradox of detachment. When you stopped chasing, you became the chase. The moment you withdrew your energy, she felt its absence, not because you punished her, but because you reclaimed yourself. You see, when a man stops pouring his attention into someone who took it for granted, something subtle but powerful happens. The energy that once surrounded her, the calls, the concern, the effort, all of it disappears. And suddenly, she feels the silence. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's undeniable. That silence begins to echo in her mind, reminding her of the calm confidence you carried when you were present. The irony is, she might not have been deeply interested before. Maybe she thought she had you figured out, that your consistency was guaranteed. But when you detached, you interrupted that certainty. And uncertainty. That's what creates attraction. A woman might not consciously admit it, but she feels drawn to a man who is centered. A man who doesn't beg for her attention because he has already found something greater, his peace. You didn't walk away to manipulate her. You walked away to return to yourself. And that act alone, that quiet decision to prioritize your peace, is what made her start looking back. Cleanthes, one of the earliest Stoics, said that inner strength is like a bowstring. The more tension it resists, the more power it holds. Think about that. You became stronger, not by acting out, but by holding your composure. The tension of not texting, not reacting, not explaining yourself, that's what built your emotional muscle. Stoicism teaches that discipline in silence is not weakness. It's the highest form of control. You prove that by showing restraint when others would have broken character. You didn't detach to prove a point. You detached because peace became more valuable than attention. Because your worth no longer needed to be seen, it just needed to be known. And that's why she can't let go. She's not haunted by the man who begged for her to stay, but by the one who didn't need her to. The calmness you now carry exposes the noise in her own world. Every time she compares you to others, she feels that contrast your silence versus their chaos, your stillness versus their need for validation. That's the paradox of detachment. When you stop trying to be remembered, you become unforgettable. When you no longer try to prove your value, it speaks for itself. You've become what every woman secretly respects: a man who can love without losing himself. And that's why, even if she's not interested, she still can't let you go. Because true strength, the Stoic kind, doesn't need to hold on to be felt. It simply is. Number 2. The emotional echo. Your silence didn't vanish, it multiplied. It became a quiet echo in her mind, replaying in the most unexpected moments. When she's alone, scrolling through her phone late at night, your calm tone reappears in her memory. When she argues with someone new and feels the heat rise in her chest, she suddenly remembers how you never matched her chaos, how you stayed still, centered, unmoved. That calm presence of yours became a contrast she can't ignore. You didn't shout, didn't beg, didn't chase. and that's what unsettles her. Because in a world where everyone reacts, you became the exception. She remembers those moments when she tried to test your emotions to see if she still had control. But instead of anger or desperation, she was met with silence. Not the cold kind, but the composed kind. The kind that says, "I know my value, even when you can't see it." And that's when the echo began. The more you held your peace, the louder it became inside her. When Epictetus was mocked in the marketplace, he didn't lash out. He smiled and said, "You can chain my leg, but not my will." That same unshakable calm is what you embodied. You weren't trying to prove you didn't care. You were showing that your emotions belong to you, not to her moods, not to her games, not to anyone else's expectations. That's a rare kind of power, the kind that can't be manipulated. Stoics call it inner freedom, the ability to remain steady while the world around you wavers. And now, she feels the weight of that freedom. Because your silence didn't punish her, it revealed her. It showed her who she becomes when control slips from her hands. The absence of your reaction forced her to face her own reflection, to realize that maybe she needed your presence more than she ever admitted. That's why she can't let you go, even if she pretends she already has. You see, emotional echoes don't fade easily. They linger in the quiet spaces between her distractions, in the pauses of her laughter, in the empty space after her notifications stop buzzing. It's not the grand gestures she misses. It's the peace you brought. The kind of peace that made her feel safe, grounded, understood. And now that it's gone, she's learning the hard way that silence, when it comes from a man who's mastered himself, can be the loudest sound she's ever heard. It's in moments like these that you realize silence isn't emptiness, it's energy. The echo you left behind became a mirror, not just for her, but for anyone who's ever underestimated calm strength. When emotion meets discipline, peace becomes power. That's the essence of what she feels now, not the absence of love, but the presence of a man who learned to master himself. And that's a rare thing in today's world. If this part resonated with you, take a second to like this video. Share your thoughts in the comments, or simply type, "My silence speaks for me." I'd love to hear what part of this message hit home for you before we move on to the next chapter. Number 3. The unfinished chapter. She wanted closure, but you gave her calm instead. That's why she keeps circling back mentally, trying to rewrite an ending you've already outgrown. Most people don't truly want closure. They want validation, reassurance that they mattered, proof that their choices were right. But when you walked away without drama, you denied her all of that. You didn't plead. You didn't try to convince her to see your worth. You simply accepted what was, and in doing so, you flipped the script. Now, instead of remembering you as another chapter she closed, she feels like she's the one who never got to finish the story. You see, Stoics like Musonius Rufus believe that silence in conflict isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's the refusal to feed chaos with reaction. You practiced that philosophy without needing to quote it. When she provoked, you stayed still. When she withdrew, you didn't chase. That quiet strength left a deeper impression than any outburst could. She wanted to test your emotions, but you responded with reason. You didn't fight for the last word because you already had peace, and peace doesn't argue. Now, she's haunted by that stillness. Every night, when she scrolls through old messages or sees something that reminds her of you, the unanswered questions whisper louder. Why didn't he fight for me? Why did he let go so easily? Did I ever really know him? She thought she'd be the one to move on first, but she didn't expect your silence to linger like this calm on the surface, yet echoing in her thoughts. You closed your book without reading hers, and that unsettled her more than any rejection could. Because now, she's the one left searching for meaning in your absence. She replays memories, trying to find clues, dissecting moments that no longer exist. That's the paradox of your composure. You didn't just walk away. You walked away without leaving footprints for her to follow. In a world where everyone demands explanations and closure, you did the rare thing: you accepted reality without resistance. That's what Stoicism teaches. Not to control the ending, but to master your response to it. And that's what she can't understand. You didn't need to win. You didn't need to prove anything. You simply chose peace over validation. And now, while she tries to rewrite an ending you've already made peace with, she's stuck in the loop of her own unfinished chapter, because deep down, she knows you were the one who found closure first. Number 4. The law of emotional contrast. She's surrounded by noise texts, compliments, validation, yet none of it feels real. Every notification lights up her phone, but not her heart. She scrolls through messages filled with flattery, but they all sound the same. They chase, they overcompensate, they try too hard to be seen. And then, somewhere in that mental chaos, she remembers you, the calm presence who didn't need to impress. The man who could sit in silence and still command attention. That memory alone disrupts her peace, because it reminds her of a rare kind of energy. The kind that doesn't beg to be noticed, but simply is. You see, this is where the law of emotional contrast comes alive. When she compares the constant noise of attention to the quiet gravity of your presence, she feels the difference deeply. Others gave her adrenaline. You gave her peace. And peace, once experienced, becomes addictive. It's not flashy, but it lingers. It's not loud, but it endures. You became her emotional baseline, the standard by which she unconsciously measures everyone else. Chrysippus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, said that wisdom isn't about escaping emotion, but mastering it. And that's exactly what you did. You didn't become cold, you became composed. You didn't chase control, you embodied it. While others reacted to rejection with ego and anger, you chose understanding. While others drowned in their need for attention, you became still like water, so calm that it reflects everything clearly. Your stillness became a mirror, showing her the difference between temporary stimulation and lasting depth. And now, she's beginning to see what she walked away from. The validation she gets from others feels empty because it lacks the essence your energy carried, that rare balance between passion and peace. It unsettles her because your silence now speaks louder than any man's words. She starts to notice how she feels drained after shallow conversations, and how your memory, even in absence, feels grounding. That's the essence of emotional contrast. When a woman has experienced the calm of a man who doesn't need to prove his worth, she can't unfeel it. She might not say it, she might even try to deny it. But her soul recognizes the difference. Because deep down, she knows anyone can create noise, but very few can create peace. And that's why she can't let you go, even if she pretends she already has. Number 5. The mirror effect. Your silence forced her to face herself. No reaction, no validation, no emotional safety net, just reflection. That's the part she never expected. When she pulled away, she thought your calm would crumble into confusion. She assumed you'd chase, explain, or plead, because that's what most men do when they're losing emotional ground. But instead, you did the opposite. You became still. You didn't try to convince her of your worth. You didn't argue for her attention. You simply let the silence speak, and that silence became a mirror she couldn't escape. You see, when a woman can no longer distract herself with your attention, she's left with the only person she can't run from herself. Every unanswered message, every unreacted post, every day you stayed silent, started to expose her own emotional patterns. She begins to wonder, why does his peace bother me? That's when the reflection begins. The truth she once buried under noise starts to surface. She's not in control of the calm she once mistook for coldness. Marcus Aurelius once reflected on the death of his teacher Rusticus, not with sorrow, but with gratitude, because even in loss, he saw a lesson in character. He understood that pain can refine the soul if you face it without resistance. That's exactly what your absence is doing for her. Your silence has become her teacher, revealing what her pride tried to conceal. You didn't leave to punish her. You withdrew to protect your peace. But in doing so, you unknowingly handed her the most honest mirror she's ever looked into. She's now forced to see the contrast between your restraint and her reaction, your composure and her confusion. You've become the calm center she can't forget because it exposes the chaos she's still carrying. Stoicism teaches that external events don't define us. Only our response does. And your response, or rather, your lack of one, has spoken louder than any argument could. Now, every quiet night reminds her of your steadiness. Every moment she scrolls through noise and validation only amplifies how empty it feels compared to the peace you carried. You became a reminder of something deeper, a presence rooted in discipline, purpose, and clarity. And that reflection stings, because she sees now that your silence wasn't rejection, it was evolution. You grew through the distance. She's still trying to understand it. And that's why she can't let you go, not because you belong to her, but because your absence has become the mirror that reveals the truth she's not yet ready to face. That's the irony of silence. It speaks when words no longer can. You didn't lecture her into realization. You let her own thoughts do that for you. Now she's wrestling with the image of a man who stayed composed when she expected chaos. And that image doesn't fade easily. It lingers. Because true strength doesn't demand to be seen. It reveals itself in stillness. So, as we move forward, take a moment to reflect on this shift. Think about how silence, when rooted in self-respect, becomes one of the most powerful teachers in any relationship. Drop your thoughts below. How do you see the power of silence shaping your own growth? Or simply type, "My peace became my mirror." Let's uncover the next insight together. Number 6. The weight of respect. Even if she doesn't admit it, she feels something new for you: respect. Because you didn't compete for her attention. You rose above needing it. There's a quiet authority in that, one that doesn't demand recognition, yet it commands it effortlessly. You see, most men, when they feel distance from a woman, rush to fill the silence with words, with gestures, with desperate attempts to prove their worth. But you didn't. You chose to step back. You chose composure over chaos, dignity over drama. And that calm unsettles her. Because it's a language few men know how to speak fluently, the language of self-control. Think of Diogenes walking barefoot through Athens, refusing comfort, refusing vanity. Even when kings offered him gold and power, he had nothing. But his strength came from that very freedom. No one could manipulate what he didn't crave. You've mirrored that same quiet defiance. You didn't beg for affection. You didn't bargain for her time. You let go of needing her approval, and in doing so, you became untouchable. She may have tried to test your limits, to see if she could still pull emotion from you. But every time you stayed composed, she saw something she couldn't unsee: a man who doesn't fold under pressure. That's where respect begins, in the silence after her provocation. In the moment, you chose restraint over reaction. You didn't win her admiration through charm or persuasion. You earned it through discipline. And that's a different kind of attraction, one rooted not in desire, but in reverence. She may not say it to her friends, but she feels it, because every time she meets a man who seeks her approval too quickly, she can't help but compare him to you, the man who didn't. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." You lived that without needing to quote it. You didn't chase what no longer aligned with your peace. And that's what confuses her most. Your ability to remain kind but detached, calm but firm, distant but not cold. You respected yourself enough to walk away from what disturbed your balance. And that kind of strength lingers in her memory, long after attraction fades. Now, even in her silence, there's an unspoken acknowledgement. She might not have chosen you then, but she sees your value now. Because while others compete for her attention, you became the man she can't forget. Not because you tried harder, but because you needed nothing. That's the weight of respect. Quiet, unshakable, and unforgettable. Number 7. The mystery of stillness. She can't read you anymore, and that mystery drives curiosity. She used to know your patterns. The way you'd respond when she pulled away. The tone you'd use when she got distant. The emotion you'd show when she tested your patience. You were predictable, and in that predictability, she felt secure in her control. But now, nothing. Silence, composure, detachment. She no longer knows what you're thinking, and that uncertainty makes her restless. You've become a mystery she didn't expect to crave. The same man who once over-explained now lets the quiet speak for him. The one who once reacted with emotion now responds with poise, or sometimes not at all. She scrolls through her messages, wondering why you don't reach out. She hears your name and feels that uneasy spark of curiosity. Has he really moved on? Is he really that calm? What she doesn't realize is that this calmness isn't performance. It's peace earned through discipline. Like Seneca writing his letters from exile, composed and untouched by the chaos of Rome, you've learned that real strength doesn't shout, it stands still. Seneca didn't beg to return, didn't plead for recognition. He transformed solitude into wisdom. And that's exactly what you've done. You turned silence into presence. You communicate through your stillness, through your consistency, through the quiet confidence that no longer needs validation. When a man reaches that level of composure, something shifts. His energy no longer chases, it pulls. His absence begins to speak louder than any text ever could. And that's why she can't fully detach. The same stillness that she once interpreted as distance now feels magnetic. It draws her back because peace, in a world full of emotional chaos, feels like gravity, impossible to resist. You see, the more she tries to decode your silence, the deeper she's pulled in. She replays past conversations, analyzing your tone, your pauses, the way you seemed unbothered when she tried to provoke you. And that unsettles her, because she realizes you've reached a level of emotional control that few men ever find. You didn't just stop reacting, you elevated above reaction. You've become a reflection of what the Stoics call apatheia. Not apathy, but mastery over impulse. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." You understood that. You stopped estimating your worth based on her attention. You stopped giving power to what you couldn't control. And by doing so, you reclaimed everything she once thought she owned: your energy, your focus, your peace. Now she's the one caught in uncertainty. She checks your profile, lingers on your silence, and wonders what you're thinking. But you've stopped living in that theater of overthinking, because your life has moved beyond needing her reaction to validate your calm. That's what makes you unforgettable. The world might praise noise, but it's always the man who masters stillness who leaves the deepest impression. And that's the paradox. The less you do, the more she feels. The less you explain, the more she imagines. You didn't vanish to create mystery. You simply returned to yourself. Yet, that return, that quiet command over your emotions, became the very thing she can't let go of. Because stillness, when it's real, doesn't just calm a man. It haunts everyone who tried to disturb his peace. Number 8. The calm that exposes chaos. She expected your absence to feel like relief, like a breath of freedom after a storm. But the moment you stopped reaching out, something strange happened. The silence didn't bring her peace. It brought her unease. She thought she wanted space, but space without your energy felt empty. You see, when someone's used to your grounded presence, your steady tone, your unshakable calm, that energy becomes part of their emotional rhythm. When it's gone, the imbalance becomes undeniable. Your composure, your stillness, your refusal to react, all of it quietly exposes the chaos she's been avoiding inside herself. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, lost everything when his ship sank. Yet, standing there, with nothing but the clothes on his back, he said, "Fortune, you do well to drive me to philosophy." Imagine that turning complete loss into a lesson. That's exactly what you did. You didn't drown in heartbreak, didn't chase closure, didn't beg for clarity. You turned inward. You rebuilt your peace from within. That's the mark of a Stoic man transforming pain into perspective and silence into strength. Your calm doesn't just make her think, it makes her feel. Because deep down, she knows she would have reacted differently. She would have argued, posted, reached out, anything to fill the void. But you didn't. You embraced the void. And now, it's that very void that pulls her back in, not because you're trying to manipulate her, but because peace is magnetic. In a world where most people panic when ignored, you became the exception, the one who didn't flinch, didn't fold, didn't need validation to stay centered. Every time she tries to distract herself with messages, attention, or someone new, your calm presence lingers like a quiet reminder. It's not your words she misses, it's your energy. The way you could make chaos feel safe, the way you could listen without reacting, the way you carried yourself with quiet certainty. That's rare. And once someone has felt that kind of peace, everything loud starts to feel shallow. Your stillness became her mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They show us everything we avoid. So while you've learned to master your emotions, she's now learning to face hers. And the more you remain at peace, the louder that contrast grows. You didn't just walk away, you became a lesson in emotional control. And that's why, even if she tells herself she's moved on, she can't fully let you go. Because your calm didn't just expose her chaos, it made her realize she's not yet strong enough to live without it. That silence she once craved is now the very thing that unsettles her, and deep down, she knows it. It's not just the absence of messages or calls. It's the absence of your presence, that calm, disciplined energy that used to ground her storms. Now she's left with echoes of what peace once felt like, realizing that freedom, without balance, doesn't feel like peace at all. And here's where reflection begins, not for her, but for you too. Because the man who learns to stay still amid emotional chaos discovers his true strength. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's mastery. It's the quiet proof that you've evolved beyond reaction. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on how your calm has changed the dynamic. Drop your thoughts below, or simply type, "My silence has meaning." Let's dive into the next exciting part of the video. Number 9. The absence that speaks. You haven't said a word, but your silence became a language she can't stop interpreting. Every story you don't post, every message you don't send it, speaks. It's in the quiet gaps where her thoughts now live. She scrolls past your name, pretending not to notice, but something in her pauses. She wonders what changed, why the man who once cared so deeply now seems unreachable. You see, silence has a strange power. It turns curiosity into reflection. And in your case, that reflection is haunting. At first, she might have mistaken your calm for indifference. She thought you were doing it to prove a point, or to get her attention back. But over time, she began to sense something deeper. That your silence wasn't a game, it was growth. You stopped trying to explain, defend, or chase clarity from someone who thrived on confusion. You chose to communicate through stillness, and that became your loudest statement. Because when a man no longer seeks validation, his absence begins to command more respect than his presence ever did. Hierocles, the Stoic philosopher who spoke of the concentric circles of connection, taught that peace begins when a man governs his inner circle himself. You embodied that lesson. Instead of trying to control how she saw you, you mastered how you saw yourself. You shifted your focus inward on your discipline, your purpose, your state of mind. And as you did, the outer circles began to reorder themselves. People who once drained you lost their influence. Situations that once shook you became tests of patience. And she, the one who once occupied your thoughts, now finds herself on the outside, watching your calm like someone locked out of a quiet temple. That's the paradox she can't escape. Your silence was never meant to provoke her, yet it did. Because real peace, the kind that can't be faked, is magnetic. It exposes chaos in others. Your stillness makes her restless. Your detachment makes her question her own control. Every day she checks for signs that you still care. But the absence of your effort says it all. You've moved beyond needing to prove anything. In Stoicism, silence isn't weakness. It's the highest form of self-command. When you stopped speaking, you didn't vanish. You transcended the conversation. Your energy stopped being reactive and started being selective. You became the man who speaks only when there's meaning, acts only when it's aligned, and walks away when peace demands it. So now, even in your absence, you remain present. Not because you're reaching out, but because your restraint echoes in her mind. Every unanswered thought becomes a question she can't resolve. And that's why she can't let go, because your silence didn't just end the story. It became the final chapter she keeps rereading, trying to understand how a man who once chased connection now radiates peace without needing to say a single word. Number 10. The power of self-containment. She can't let go, because you don't need to hold on. You've reached a place where your peace no longer depends on her attention. You're not seeking closure, validation, or reassurance, because you've learned that what you were chasing in her was something only you could build within yourself. And that realization changes everything. It's not indifference, it's mastery. When you stopped reaching outward, you began rising inward. You see, most people confuse connection with completion. They think someone else will fill the spaces inside them. But when you learn to fill those spaces with purpose, with discipline, with self-respect, you become whole. That's the moment she starts to feel your absence differently. It's no longer the absence of a man who once cared. It's the absence of dependence. You don't orbit her anymore, and that stillness, that refusal to need, becomes the most magnetic thing about you. Aristo of Chios, one of the early Stoics, believed that pleasure and pain distract the soul from virtue. To him, real peace isn't found in comfort, but in consistency, in the ability to remain unmoved by extremes. That's what your emotional independence represents. While she's driven by impulse, trying to feel something new, something exciting, you've become steady. You're not swayed by who texts first, who wins the argument, or who appears happier online. You've risen above that entire game, and that's what makes your presence unforgettable. Imagine this. She's surrounded by people who constantly perform, posting, chasing, competing for attention. But you disappeared into calm. You're not performing, you're progressing. You've turned your silence into a sanctuary, a space where peace, not validation, is your source of strength. That contrast lingers in her mind because it exposes the noise she's still living in. Every time she meets someone new, she feels the difference. They react, you don't. They seek, you attract. And that's why she can't truly let you go. You've become something rare, a man who doesn't need to prove his worth to feel it. Your calm unsettles her because it reflects what she hasn't mastered within herself. You've embodied what Stoics call autarkia, self-sufficiency. You no longer depend on anything external to define your value. That kind of presence doesn't fade after a breakup. It stays in the mind, like a quiet echo of truth. While she chases feeling, you've become foundation. You've stopped being a chapter in her story, you've become a lesson. A reminder that true strength isn't loud, desperate, or dramatic. It's found in the stillness of a man who knows himself. And once a woman experiences that level of composure, it's not something she forgets. Because no matter where she goes, every other connection will feel like noise compared to the peace you left behind. Pause for a moment and let this truth settle in. The kind of peace you've built can't be faked. It's not the silence of withdrawal. It's the calm that comes from understanding yourself. That's why it leaves such a lasting impression. When a man reaches this level of inner stability, everything around him starts to shift. Not because he's trying to control outcomes, but because he's learned to control himself. That's real power. So, as you reflect on this, ask yourself, where in your life are you still chasing what you could instead create within? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Let's move on and find out what happens next. Number 11. The unshakable presence. You've become what she once wished you'd be. Grounded, focused, unbothered. But now, it's not for her, it's for yourself. There's a quiet gravity in a man who no longer reacts, who doesn't need to prove or chase. That kind of composure doesn't come overnight. It's forged in silence, in the moments when you could have begged for her attention, but chose instead to build your own peace. You've turned restraint into strength, and that's what unsettles her most. Cato the Younger faced death rather than surrender his integrity. That was the ultimate act of Stoic resolve, standing firm in principle when everything around him demanded compromise. You've mirrored that same defiance in your own way. You didn't surrender your dignity just to be loved. When she pulled away, you didn't chase. When she tested your limits, you didn't break. You remained calm, not because you didn't care, but because you finally understood that your peace was worth more than her approval. And that realization changed everything. You see, when a man reaches this level of stillness, he becomes unshakable. You no longer measure your worth through her eyes. You find it in the way you carry yourself. You're not playing games, you've simply stopped being a pawn. You're no longer waiting for her to recognize your value because you've already recognized it yourself. And that shift, that emotional independence, radiates something few people can ignore. She feels it, even if she doesn't say it. Maybe she catches herself, wondering why your absence feels heavier than other people's presence. Maybe she scrolls past your photos and senses a calm that used to depend on her, but no longer does. That's the paradox. The more you detach, the more you attract. Because peace, true, disciplined peace, can't be faked. It's the kind of energy that commands attention without asking for it. You've become like a mountain in her memory, unmoved, patient, self-contained. The storms around you may have raged, but you stayed rooted. And that's what she can't let go of. She remembers the man who no longer needed to be understood to stand firm. The man whose silence carried more confidence than any argument ever could. In a world of men desperate to be noticed, your calm became unforgettable. That's what it means to have an unshakable presence, not to be louder, but to be deeper. Not to chase validation, but to embody it. And that, my friend, is the kind of strength she'll never truly forget. When a man finally finds peace, he stops needing to prove it, and that's when his presence becomes unforgettable. You didn't win by chasing, arguing, or explaining. You won by mastering yourself. You've become the man who doesn't beg for attention because he carries peace that speaks louder than words. That's what Stoicism is truly about. Governing the only thing you can control. Your mind, your reactions, your energy. And the moment you did that, everything around you began to shift. Her curiosity, her silence, her reflection, all of it stems from one truth. You chose stillness over chaos, and that decision changed everything. If this video resonated with you, give it a like. It helps more men find this message. Share your thoughts below. I'd love to know which part spoke to you the most. And before you go, don't forget to watch the recommended videos on screen. They'll help you continue mastering calm, presence, and purpose.